Good morning and Assalamu alaikum dear students. I hope you all are well and fine and good. Welcome back to the class. In this class we would learn some of the new things, some of the new information. Hopefully you are safe at home, you are keeping social distance, you are washing your hands repeatedly and you are protecting yourself from coronavirus. So keep it up. Let's begin today's class. So my dear students, in the last class we have started our chapter number 2 and the name of the chapter was Eclipses. It is our chapter number 2 and it is on page number 34. You can observe here in this animated picture that something is going on. Okay, this is how the eclipse looks like. What are the conditions of eclipses? What are the types of eclipses we have discussed in last class? We would continue our chapter from today's class. We have learned one of its kind and we will start from the next type of eclipses. Apart from this, we have learned the things like what is orbit, how much time does moon take to revolve around the earth, and how much time earth takes to revolve and rotate. Okay, so let's begin. As we know that there are the types of eclipses and we know that there are two types of eclipses. Number 1, lunar eclipse and number 2, solar eclipse. Okay, we have discussed, first of all we should know that solar is the word that indicates sun and lunar is the word that indicates moon. So when the sun gets dark, it is solar eclipse. When the moon gets dark, it is lunar eclipse. Okay, so the solar eclipse we have discussed in the last class in detail. Okay, we would start a chapter or today's lecture with lunar eclipse. So let's see what is solar eclipse, then we will proceed to lunar eclipse. Solar eclipses. This is how solar eclipse look like. When moon comes in between sun and earth, solar eclipse happens. So how can we define it? When moon comes in between the earth and the sun, solar eclipse happens. It blocks the sunlight. Okay, sun is giving the sunlight. When moon comes in between the earth and the sun, so it blocks the sunlight to reach the earth. The sky slowly gets dark. You can see that some of the part of earth gets dark due to this moon, because this moon is coming in between the earth and the sun, so the sunlight is blocked. So that particular area of earth will observe their sky to be dark. We have discussed this in last. So here comes the next type of eclipses, and that is lunar eclipse. In solar eclipse, sun gets dark. In lunar eclipse, moon will get dark. Okay, so if we see here, if we watch this video, so you can see that the moon is orbiting around the earth. It comes in between sun and earth and it goes back to the earth. And this is how it is orbiting. Okay, so how can we define it in the words? When the earth comes in between the moon and the sun. When earth comes, okay, it means when it goes back, earth comes in center. When the earth comes in between sun and the moon, lunar eclipse occurs. It blocks the sunlight to reach the moon. When moon goes back to the earth, so there is no sunlight on the moon. And we know that moon does not have its own light. It takes the light from sun. But when it goes back, the sunlight is blocked. So the moon slowly gets dark because here no light is reaching on the moon. So it gets dark. Here you can see when it comes back to the earth, it becomes dark, or sometimes it appears to have colors like orange, red, brown. Okay. Now look at here. This is the sun, this is the earth. Now this is the part of earth where night time is there. Okay. So the lunar eclipse would be observed only in the night time. This part of the earth is not going to face lunar eclipse this time. Okay, so what would happen that when moon comes back to the earth, it appears to have red color, orange color, and sometime brown colors, or sometime it disappears completely. Okay, let's define the lunar eclipse in simple words now. Here you can see that this moon is orbiting around the earth. We know that moon orbits around the earth and earth orbits around the sun. But in eclipses, we know that when these three things make line with each other like this, when they make line with each other, so an eclipse occurs. Okay, so you can see here that what is the definition of lunar eclipse? When earth comes in between the sun and the moon. This is the earth and it is in the center. It is in the center of the sun and the moon. Okay, so this is the lunar eclipse. When it happens, so moon gets dark and sometime it appears to have some of the colors like brown, orange, yellow. Okay, so this is how the lunar eclipse happens. Students, solar eclipse and lunar eclipse happen due to the normal movement of moon and earth. But previously there was no awareness and people used to think that there are a number of the causes behind the solar and lunar eclipse, from which some of the myths are included in your book. So we're gonna discuss them one by one. So students, here is the very first myth about solar eclipse, and that is a Chinese myth. Why we have taken Chinese myth as a first myth for our slide or lecture? Because the earliest record of solar eclipse comes from an ancient Chinese story. Okay, so the very first time it was observed or recorded by Chinese people. What they used to believe? Chinese people used to believe that eclipse is caused by an invisible dragon eating the sun. As we know that in solar eclipse sun gets dark or sometime it disappears. So what Chinese people used to believe? They used to believe that eclipse means solar eclipse is caused by invisible dragon eating the sun. They used to believe that there is a dragon in the sky and that dragon eats the sun and the sun disappears. Here is another myth about solar eclipse, and that is Japanese myth. In Japan, people once believed that there is a poison dropping from the sky during an eclipse. They used to believe whenever eclipse happens, there is a poison that is dropping from the sky. Plus, they used to cover all of their food in water. They thought this poison will be dropped into their food and water and it can cause their death. So here is another myth about solar eclipse, and that is Hindu myth. What they used to believe: in India, people once believed that there is an invisible dragon in the sky that is responsible for eclipse. Like Chinese people, there were some of the people in India, they believe that there is an invisible dragon in the sky and that dragon is responsible for eclipses. So what they used to do? They used to offer special worship during eclipse. And some of them believe that one of their gods is responsible for eclipse. So here are two different myths for Hindu. In India, here we are talking about India, okay? So it was believed in India that there is an invisible dragon in the sky and that dragon is responsible for eclipse. And what they used to do? In such case, they used to offer special worship during eclipse. Okay, apart from this myth, there is another myth related to Hindu, and that is some of them believe that one of their gods is responsible for eclipse. Apart from myths, there is an interesting story about eclipse. And that story is not about solar eclipse, this story is about lunar eclipse. It's a real story. So what happened? Let's see. So what happens in this story? Let's begin. Once upon a time there was a man named as Christopher Columbus. He used to have most of his journeys with his team, his companions, his crews. And don't forget that Christopher Columbus was the one who discovered America, or America was discovered by Christopher Columbus. So what happened in the story? Christopher Columbus with his crews went to an island, and the name of the island was Jamaica. Means they went to an island and the name of the island was Jamaica, and they went there for a year. Okay, for a year they went there. So what happens after some times their food supply became low. They initiated their journey, or their initial days were well, but after some time their food supply became low. But Christopher Columbus was an intelligent man. So what he did, let's see. Christopher Columbus traded Native Americans for food. Okay, Native Americans are the people who used to live in America. So what Christopher Columbus did? He started trading with Native Americans for food. In return, they used to get food. But what happens? After some times, Native Americans refused to supply food. They refused to supply food, but the Christopher Columbus is intelligent enough to sort out this problem. So what he did further, Christopher Columbus knew that soon the lunar eclipse would happen. We know that what happens in lunar eclipse, moon gets dark or sometime it disappears. Christopher Columbus knew this thing because he was intelligent and clever enough. So Columbus told natives that God was angry with them for not providing them with food. Okay, so initially the Native Americans did not believe it, but what happens? Christopher Columbus told the Native Americans that God was going to make their moon disappear. Okay, so because he knew that lunar eclipse is going to happen. Afterwards, lunar eclipse happened. And what happens in lunar eclipse? Moon disappears. So Native Americans begged Columbus to ask God to forgive them. They thought that Christopher Columbus was right and God is punishing them by snatching their moon. So Native Americans begged Columbus to ask God to forgive them. As lunar eclipse ended, what Columbus did? Columbus told them that God had forgiven them. So Native Americans started supplying food again, and this is what he wanted from them. So this is how it happened, that once upon a time the lunar eclipse was, you can say, useful for Christopher Columbus, and he made the Native Americans fool because he knew that lunar eclipse and solar eclipse happen due to the normal movement of the sun, but Native Americans were unaware of this. Okay, so this is how it happened. So this is all about your chapter. In this chapter Eclipses, we have learned many of the things, like when sun, moon and earth form a line with each other, so eclipses happens. There are two types of eclipses, solar eclipse and lunar eclipse. When sun gets dark, it is solar eclipse, and when moon gets dark, it is lunar eclipse. Apart from the types of eclipses, there are some of the conditions: partial eclipse and total eclipse. When the sun is completely hidden, that is total eclipse. And when the sun is partially or hidden but not completely, so that is partial eclipse. Apart from this, what people used to believe about eclipses, we learned in this chapter. There were many of the myths about solar and lunar eclipse because people were unaware of the signs and these normal movement of earth and moon. Apart from this, there was a real story of Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus is the one who discovered America, and how he made Native Americans fool, we came to know in this chapter. So that was all about your chapter. I hope you have got all of the things. So what you have to do, hopefully you have got all the things in this chapter. You have to read the chapter properly, underline all the important lines, Plus, there are the diagrams of solar eclipse and lunar eclipse. You have to practice them very properly. They are very important and you can practice them on loose sheets. Okay, underline the important lines or highlight the important lines. This was all about our chapter and our lecture. Thank you so much. Inshallah, we shall meet in the next class. Take care.